Story 1. The Death God's Cursed Gold Mine. What follows is a tale about the opposing paths of greed and caution in the wild American West. Wyoming, with its snow-capped mountains and stark canyons, harbors countless chilling legends of treasures buried by unforgiving, trapped souls. Let us hear Claire's story, retold from the haunting memory of her truck-driving grandfather. Hello, Alex. My name is Claire, and I want to share a story my grandfather, Grandpa Alvin, used to tell. He was a veteran truck driver for 40 years. He always said this was the most real and horrifying thing that ever happened to him. Grandpa Alvin and his wife, Grandma Teresa, lived a humble life on the outskirts of Salt Lake City, Utah during the 90s. To earn a living, he regularly hauled heavy freight across the desolate and freezing stretches of I-80 from Utah to Denver, Colorado. This was a harsh, lonely route where headlights were the only defense against the prairie's black abyss. On a cold October night, as the sunset stained the jagged mountain peaks a blood-red color, Grandpa Alvin pulled his old Mack truck into a nearly abandoned rest stop called the Crossroads, near Rawlins, Wyoming, a region notorious for its haunted, defunct gold mining towns. After filling up the diesel tank and taking a quick, dusty wash-up, Alvin bought a can of black coffee and settled into his cab to sleep, carefully locking the doors. But sleep did not come peacefully. He fell into a strange, startlingly vivid and terrifying dream. In the dream, the cab's space suddenly became damp and frigid. A tall, scraggly bearded man, dressed in tattered work clothes stained with dry mud, abruptly appeared standing right next to his bunk. The stench of decaying earth and sulfur was suffocating. "Hey, Mr. Alvin." The voice was a deep rasp, like stones grating against each other. "I am Silas. I need your help. My soul is bound." Silas stared at Grandpa Alvin with deep-set, pupil-less eyes and whispered his tale. He had died years ago in a devastating mine collapse at a cursed gold operation run by a cruel owner. His soul was trapped, unable to cross over. "Before I was buried," Silas's voice grew increasingly desperate, "I hid an old oak box. It is filled with gold nuggets and gems we secretly mined. It is right under the colossal cottonwood tree, behind the dilapidated two-story cabin next to this very rest stop. Take it all, but please, you must find it. Only when that treasure is brought to light can my spirit be freed." Grandpa Alvin said the dream felt so real that he could smell the damp earth, sour sweat, and even a faint scent of decomposition emanating from the man. The dream lingered like a film, with fleeting images of light reflecting off Silas's old shovel before he vanished with a silent, agonizing scream. My grandfather woke up at dawn, drenched in cold sweat. The cry of a black raven perched on his side mirror made him jump. A frantic curiosity and a feeling of acute excitement swelled within him. Greed. He skipped breakfast. He stared at his map, then drove his heavy truck out of the rest stop. Sure enough, only a few hundred yards later, tucked away behind a clump of dry trees, stood a dilapidated two-story wooden cabin. It looked utterly empty, its windows shattered like empty eye sockets, and behind it, standing isolated on scorched earth, was an ancient, impossibly large black cottonwood tree, its trunk twisted like a person in anguish. Grandpa Alvin stopped the truck. He stared at the cabin and the tree. His heart pounded, a frantic, chaotic rhythm of avarice and dread. He considered digging, a treasure that could change his entire struggling life, pay for his two daughters' education, and free him from these grueling night trips. He retrieved his old shovel from the storage compartment, but the moment his hand touched the rough wooden handle, an intense, inexplicable dread washed over him, as potent as a physical blow. It wasn't the usual fear of doing something wrong. It was a primal, instinctive warning, a profoundly cold current of air, not from the weather but from inside the truck. The atmosphere thickened, and Grandpa Alvin felt as if the truck was being watched by dozens of invisible eyes. He heard a very faint moan, not Silas's, but a different voice, high-pitched and full of hatred, seeming to emanate from the cottonwood tree itself. Mine. Grandpa Alvin's practicality saved him. He was an honest and extremely realistic man. He recalled the warnings of old drivers. The old gold diggers and ranchers buried their treasure with malice. It is cursed. Not to hide it, but to curse whoever finds it. The treasure is a lure to keep their souls tethered. He threw the shovel onto the floor. He revved the powerful Mack engine, left a thick trail of black smoke and sped straight towards Denver. He never, absolutely never, returned to that stretch of I-80 near Rawlins at night again. It was because of this haunting story that he later named his youngest daughter Maria, after the highway near where the dream occurred, Maria I-80, a conceptual link, as a permanent reminder to always be cautious of greed. Grandpa Alvin has passed away, and I share this story in honor of an honest man who survived by his prudence and timely fear. Story 2. Pacific Coast Highway. The U.S. West Coast, the Pacific Coast Highway, PCH, is an anthem to natural grandeur. But at night it becomes a prayer for lost souls. Here the boundary between infinite beauty and the dark abyss is perilously thin. This story is the confession of David, a driver who lost not only sleep but his faith in reality, at the so-called gateway to an earthly hell, Bixby Bridge. Hello, Alex, my name is David, and I don't know where I am in the timeline anymore. What we saw that night, it wasn't just ordinary horror. It was a chronological malignancy, a curse woven from pure fear, and I know it still exists, waiting for us to return. Every time I close my eyes, I see that silver light. It was the night of October 3rd, 2018. Jake and I, 2 seasoned truck drivers, were on a high-value transport contract. Our cargo, hermetically sealed and satellite-protected microelectronic components, was worth millions. The time pressure was immense. We had to clear Big Sur, a wilderness with no gas stations or civilization, before sunrise. Boem, Titan, our freightliner Cascadia, heavily muscled its way through the winding passes, the $600 horsepower engine the only sound breaking the silence. The night was moonless. The xenon headlights only illuminated a narrow stretch of road. The rest was the dense blackness of rock. To the right, sheer cliffs. To the left, an infinite drop where the Pacific Ocean waves crashed. The sound like a cold, regular breath, a silent waiting. Jake was grumbling about new shipping regulations on the CB radio when that voice suddenly cut in, overriding all signals. Breaker, is anyone out there? Front tire blown. Stuck in the pullout just before Bixby Bridge. Please, if you're close, help me. I've been here since sundown. I tried to fix it, but they won't let me alone. And I hear the whispers. The man's voice was horrifyingly muffled, resonant, not due to static, but as if he were speaking through a layer of thick liquid, full of despair yet lacking any emotional cadence. It sounded like an audio recording of suffering, played back slightly too slow. Jake, known for his tough demeanor, had the heart of a father. He grabbed the mic. We're coming. About 4 more miles. Hold on, friend. Try to hold on. Less than 3 minutes later, we rounded the final curve, where we should have seen the amber warning lights of a disabled truck. Instead, we were faced with an unbelievable sight. The silver fog wall. It was more than twice the height of our truck, so dense it was nearly solid. It stood straight up, completely motionless, blocking the road entirely. It was not normal fog. It had an opaque, almost metallic white hue, and it emitted an unnatural, bitter cold. Stop. Stop right now, I screamed. Jake slammed the brakes, the tires screeching. The truck stopped just 15 feet from the fog wall. The external thermometer on the dashboard suddenly plunged from 12 Dauer, circun text C to 0, circun text C, and continued dropping, reaching a temperature impossible for the seaside. The cab fell into an oppressive silence, and then the real horror began. The call came again, not from the radio. It came from outside, from the very heart of the static fog wall. Help!
Help! Please don't leave me here!
Don't go! They are getting closer. I can't move. The voice was warped, mechanically repeating short phrases, sounding like an old stretched tape loop playing back pain. It was no longer a plea for help. It was an aural echo of eternal suffering. Jake killed the engine and flipped on the high beams, but the light was simply devoured by the mist. Listen carefully, David, he whispered, his voice ragged. If he was injured, he'd crawl out. If he was stuck, he'd scream naturally. This thing is creating an auditory memorandum to lure us in. 5 minutes later, in a silence so tense that my chest felt ready to burst, we saw it. A massive, dark shadow began to emerge slowly and unnaturally from the center of the road. It didn't walk. It slid forward, causing no sound on the asphalt. It was a terrifying shape, over 10 feet, 3 meters tall, bone-thin, yet possessing a dreadful physical mass. Its skin was not flesh but a sickly gray viscous material, seemingly melting or covered in a layer of deep-sea sludge. But the most horrifying part was its hands. They were impossibly long and spindly, like dry seabed branches, the fingertips dragging the ground. And it was holding a torn, soaking, and distorted truck tire. The creature stopped right in the middle of the road, about 20 feet from Titan's nose. It slowly turned its head towards us. It had no discernible eyes, just empty sockets and an unnaturally wide mouth on its elongated head, but we felt its gaze piercing the windshield through the cab, locking onto us as if we were already marked, and then the realization hit. It used its impossibly long arms to scrape the torn tire violently against the asphalt. The ear-splitting, gruesome sound created by the friction and the shredded rubber was the exact distorted scream for help we heard over the radio. It had perfectly mimicked human distress, not through a voice box but through the physicality of despair. Jake gasped, "It's not undead. It's an impersonator. A simulator of despair. It's trying to drag us into its loop." The monstrous entity began to sway, slowly moving closer. Fear had reached a level that froze, paralyzing all will. "We are not dying in the devil's pullout," Jake roared. He turned the key. The Titan's engine roared to life with a mighty sound. He didn't use the horn. He grabbed the CB mic, turned the volume to maximum, and screamed into it, not to communicate, but to resist. "Get out! You won't fool us! This is our road!" Then he floored the accelerator maniacally. Titan rammed straight into the fog wall. Everything became a white chaos. Zero visibility. And the distorted shriek from the radio exploded into a high-pitched, frantic scream. "Come back! You can't escape! You will repeat! You are part of us!" Jake cranked the old cassette player to max volume. Separate ways, worlds apart. By Journey blasted through the cab, the driving electric guitar and drums a desperate, violent sound, a scream of life. The music was the ultimate resistance. In less than 30 seconds, the truck burst out of the fog. Bixby Bridge appeared ahead, intact, majestic under the flickering traffic lights. There was no fog, no creature, no broken-down truck. The road behind was clear. Everything returned to normal, as if a terrifying scene had just been switch-turned off. Jake didn't look back. He drove over Bixby like a man fleeing from prison. We made it to Seattle safely, but fear is not something you can unload. Jake couldn't sleep. He was haunted by the last word. It shrieked, "You will repeat!" He believes the entity didn't need to kill us. It only needed to trap us in its insanity. He explained, "Every broken-down truck, every CB distress call, is part of the loop that the entity creates on the PCH, using the frozen souls of unfortunate drivers as bait. It's a cosmic anomaly feeding on time and fear." Jake quit night driving. "I still have to drive, but I always travel with my collection of classic rock cassettes, volume cranked high. Every time I see a thin wisp of fog, a patch of cloud over the PCH at night, I hear the whisper in my mind, 'Help me.' I've been here since sundown. I know the loop is waiting for me, and I fear that one day, the torn tire in the creature's hand will be ours." Story 3. Story 4, The Phantom Maze on Nevada's Highway 95, finally. A narrative that speaks to the deepest family pain. A complete disappearance without explanation. A white spot in the criminal archives that frequently haunts the isolated, forgotten stretches of Nevada's forgotten highways. Hello, Morgan. My name is Ryan. This story did not happen directly to me, but to my beloved father, whom I will call Sebastian to protect my family's privacy. I have changed both names and the exact location, but the root, the sense of dread, and the sheer emptiness it left behind are chillingly real. My father was an experienced long-haul truck driver, a simple, tough man and famously stubborn in his skepticism. He had driven every road in America for 30 years. His last shipment was a load of construction lumber bound for a remote rural outpost, deep in the stark Nevada desert. That route, to the professional drivers, wasn't just the plain Highway 95. They knew it by a far colder moniker, the Highway of Lost Souls. It was a fateful Friday, late October, as the desert night began to turn strangely cold and hostile. My father called me on his ancient brick Nokia phone, the one he always trusted. His voice, usually steady and quiet, had a noticeable tremor of unease mixed with the excitement of finally heading home. "I'm rushing home, Ryan. The road is eerily deserted.
scarily silent.
I'm not stopping at the truck stop ahead. This road is too quiet, son. No insects, no wind howl. Not even the sound of migrating birds like usual. It feels like all the sound has been sucked away. I need to floor it and get out of this feeling. Tell your mother I love her and I miss you. That was the last time I ever heard his voice. Just a few seconds, but the hurried catch in his final breath still haunts me today. 2 days later, the trucking company reported the rig hadn't reached its destination. His phone was unreachable, only a sterile, dead tone. Simple delay? An accident? My unease curdled into real dread by the following Tuesday. My uncle, a former police officer, and I immediately began our own search. We tracked his planned route, feeling the cold, almost tangible hostility of the Nevada desert. And then, we found it. The colossal Freightliner truck was abandoned on the roadside, like a metal behemoth fallen asleep amidst the desolation. Outwardly, the vehicle was completely undamaged. No signs of impact, no skid marks leading off the pavement. The strangest part, absolutely no evidence of abrupt braking. It was as if my father had stopped deliberately, methodically, and then vanished. The driver's side and passenger doors were both securely locked from the inside. We had to break a small window pane to check. The cabin was empty. All of my father's personal items, his old leather wallet, his house keys, even his signature baseball cap, had evaporated. The entire cargo, lumber, was still intact, tightly secured and sealed. My father had simply dematerialized. We spoke to a few locals living near a derelict old rest area a few miles away. One elderly woman who had lived there since the 60s, her cloudy eyes staring blankly into the distance, recounted, "That stretch of road is cursed. It just swallows people. Happens every year. They speak of faceless devil processions walking the highway on the full moon. Ghosts from never-recorded accidents and hitchhikers who disappear completely, leaving not even a footprint in the sand." She shivered and refused to say more. The county police began their investigation, but the lack of evidence left them stalled. The truck was parked not far from a gas station that had been closed and abandoned for years. Fortunately, this station still maintained an old security camera powered by a solar panel. The footage. After hours of watching grainy, static-filled tape, we saw it at 12:07 a.m. My father's truck pulled off the road and stopped. The location was utterly silent, no patrol cars, no other vehicles. The camera showed the headlights turning off, the engine stopping, and then nothing happened. We watched that scene for hours with the detectives. My father never stepped out. No one ever stepped in. There was no unusual flash of light, only image silence. The truck sat there motionless throughout the night. The next day, a few passing motorists peered curiously into the windows, probably seeing it locked, and drove on. Until we and the police arrived, Morgan, to put it chillingly, my father was never found. The police had to break into the cab. There was nothing unusual inside except that his Nokia phone had also vanished. His final call to me, the one about the silence, was geolocated precisely near where the truck was abandoned. The police searched meticulously, sweeping the entire area as if an invisible void had sucked him away. No trace, no blood, not a single strand of hair. The case file was archived years ago, labeled "Unusual Disappearance, Lack of Criminal Evidence." My father was declared legally deceased after 3 years of fruitless searching. The most haunting element remains the video footage. It is the only piece of evidence, yet it contradicts every single theory. The police are obsessed with it too. No one in, no one out. The only theory they reluctantly offered was that he had somehow crawled underneath the truck, out behind the trailer, out of the camera's view, but that was physically impossible given his size, a large man, and the cramped dimensions of the truck's cab. Furthermore, why would he do that? And why would he lock the doors from the inside? We held a memorial to say goodbye to his memory, but we can never bury the truth. I send this story to you because you respect these eerie narratives, and perhaps you will be the last to hear the echo of the terrible silence on Highway 95.